share this final preview discussion platform with our co-creators, the composer Danny Paller, book writer Myra Noveck. Let's hear that. If there are any stars in this show, it's them. So it's been such a joy to work with them. And it's equally a joy to have Gershom Gorenberg with us today. He's the author of many books, the writer in many, many periodicals, but in particular, we're going to be talking about a seminal book of his called The Unmaking of Israel, and really a story about the birth of the settlement movement. So we have two functions today in this conversation, and that's one, to explore the element of religious extremism, how it came to be, how it came to root itself so powerfully and in such a growing fashion in the country. But we also, of course, want to talk about a very special collaboration here between friends and a collaboration between a husband and wife, because Gershom and Myra are married for many years. And we're interested in how this collaboration came to be. So, maybe I can start by passing the microphone all the way down to Danny. We're going to do a couple of origin stories. One is the origin story of this play, and then it's the origin story of religious extremism in Israel. And we'll get to Gershom with that. But I'll throw the microphone all the way over to Danny and then to Myra, so that you can just give us a little background on how this play began, and then we'll talk about the movement.
Thank you all for being here. I write musicals. It's how I express myself. Some people write op-eds and I write musicals. 9 years ago, I had thought about some of the previous musicals I'd worked on that were in faraway places and faraway times, and I said, I want to do something that hits closer to home, that's really more of my story. And for whatever reason, I gravitated, this is 9 years ago again, to 1995, when I really felt like the country changed. Like I had moved to Israel with certain dreams. Some of those were realized, but the dream of peace was shattered, and I went back to that moment to revisit it. That's what I wanted to do, and I knew if I did it alone, I write music and lyrics, I would mess up the facts. So I recruited Myra, who's a journalist by training, but also a writer of screenplays, to really tell the story close to the surface of how it really played. I will add that in November '95, when this happened, we had two boys, and then a daughter was born. Our daughter Eden, which means delight, was born on October 29th, 1995, and there was just so much joy and so much hope, both on the familial level and on the national level right then. And then this happened. And it was, I had to hold in my hands hope and despair. I had to contain both of those at the same time. So I remember so vividly that period, and I think it's what we all do. Now, we try to hold both of those things. We know there's despair, and we try to hold the hope at the same time. So that's what prompted me to say, let's write this musical, and Myra said, why not?
You should say a little bit about how you came to it, and then we'll...
Okay, so I was at that demonstration.
In the microphone.
Oh, okay. I was at that demonstration. We have a mutual friend who that day at Shul, he was talking, he says, I don't go to every demonstration, but this one's important. And you see that that was in the play. And so I was there, and when we left the demonstration, we were all so happy, and they were playing this really joyous song in the square, and then we went out to where the buses were, and by the time we got there, people were already talking, and every time we went to a bus driver to find out where the Jerusalem buses are, the news got worse and worse as we got there, and the terrible announcement that he had died happened just as we were passing, it was called Shahagai, which is a very famous battle of 1948 war in which Rabin took part. So when Danny suggested this, I jumped at it. It was a way. It takes a long time to process death, and certainly one that is not just a personal loss, but a loss for the country. And Baruch Goldstein and Yigal Amir together were two very successful terrorists. And we're still living in the reality that was created in 1995.
Gershom, before you talk about the origins and the evolution of religious extremism, I wonder if you could comment a little bit on just the three of you as living in Jerusalem. You're all observant Jews, religious, quasi-religious. None of you are right-wing. You're all members of the left and religious. Can you talk about that identity, how that comes to be, and live in Jerusalem of all places now, amidst the change and what's always been in the country?
That's not the mystery for me.
No?
It's perfectly logical for me to be a religious Jew who absolutely wants the country to be at peace and to put human life at the top of priorities. The mystery for me has always been the extremists, and I've been, that drive has driven my reporting and my historical research for, when was my first assignment covering settlements? 40 years ago. One of the editors was talking to another one and said, we'll send Gershom to talk to the settlers, they'll talk to him. Which was true. They talked to me and they wouldn't talk to other people because they saw a beard and a kippah, and they had this certain misconception that I agreed with them, and they opened up. And I can give you lots of explanations and historical research about that, but I'm going to say again, the basic, most important Jewish values of the value of life, of the value of all human beings, are natural. The mystery that has driven me is how people can turn that on its head.
So let's then talk about religious Zionism and how that first interview 40 years ago, where you spoke to a small segment of society, how that grew into what we hear in the play is 120,000 settlers. How many now?
Probably, if you count everybody living over the 67 boundary, including East Jerusalem, it would be about 700,000. Outside of East Jerusalem, it would be about 500,000. I make that distinction not because in international legal terms it's a distinction, but because there's very much a difference in consciousness of people living in the East Jerusalem neighborhoods from people who have gone further out, because inside of Israel, East Jerusalem was annexed, so people like that don't think of themselves as necessarily as having moved over the line. How did that happen? Well, first of all, I want to stress not all of those people belong to the religious extremist group. A very large portion of people who have moved to the settlements have done so because vast investment in the settlements has simply made it cheaper to live there. And that probably accounts for the largest portion of settlers. In other words, people who didn't oppose moving there but weren't necessarily ideologues. The core group And the group that people usually refer to when they think of the settlers is actually a minority of that group, but is the people who are involved in it because of a religious ideology. And our pseudo-religious ideology, what do I mean by that? Is that the nature of religion, and particularly religion in the modern era, is that it can absorb secular ideas and then it superpowers them. It adds this extra fuel, this, and those can be very positive values. Those can be values of civil rights. And they can be very negative values, like turning soil and power into religious values. And how did that happen within a certain segment of the religious community in Israel? One major, okay, this is really difficult. I've written 3 books about this, and you want me to explain it. Not exactly standing on one foot, but, part of me just says, go read the books. But,
Well, I'll do it even worse. You've given us 2 extraordinary titles in your books. I'm going to ask you to explain the titles in 30 seconds.
Okay.
The Unmaking of Israel, An Accidental Empire. It says so much right there. Why do you say, what does it mean to say the Unmaking of Israel?
Okay, first of all, I want to say that my principle as a journalist and as a historian is I do not report the future. It's hard enough reporting the present and the past. So when I entitled the book The Unmaking of Israel, that was not a prediction, that was a warning. And the warning involved many things. As I said, I'm not going to try to do the whole book while sitting here with a microphone in my hand. But one large part of it was the role of religious extremism and the way that the settlement movement had undermined core values of Israel and of Zionism. And part of how that happened is that following the victory in 1967, and within part of the religious world, it seemed like such a miracle that people tried to explain it, and they latched onto a theology that said that this victory was part of God's plan for bringing the Messianic era. And when you do that, when you connect this worldly events to this fantastic vision, it becomes possible to submerge all values in pursuit of that. Because after all, that's going to make everything okay. And that happens in all sorts of ideologies, but in this particular one, the thing that people latched onto was the idea that conquering these territories was God's plan, and anything that involved giving up that land was not only a political problem, but a theological or a cosmological problem. And that drove a central part of the settlement movement. And it drove the opposition to Oslo. And it drove the opposition to giving up settlements in Gaza. And it has driven a minority that holds the balance of power in the current government to see the war that began with the Hamas attack on October 7th, not as, in real world terms, as a disaster, but as an opportunity to go back and conquer Gaza. And if that sounds to you like turning the world on its head, that is true. But that's what, that is rooted in this feeling that I know what God's plan is, and attaching that to a set of values that really come from outside of religion. And the last thing I'll say about this is religious language is so ambiguous, and religious traditions are so large and contain so many contradictions that if you want to come up with a way to justify keeping the land as a religious value, or if you want to come up with a way to turn Islamic values into terrorism, or if you want to come up with, I don't know, justifying some crazy guy being an autocrat in the United States and saying that that's Christianity, you can somewhere out there find a line that you can misinterpret to justify that. That doesn't mean that that's natural or the core of religion, but it's a very powerful potential.
So,
I have a question to Gershom.
yeah, please.
As I intimated, this has been a long journey for Myra and myself. We started 9 years ago. Myra developed these complex characters. I took every emotion that this story evokes for me and put it into the music. We wrote it in English, but it was translated to Hebrew. It was staged in Israel in a mean, lean version, 1 hour cabaret with 4 women presenting all the roles. It now has a hugely different incarnation, right? What you've just seen. And Gershom has never seen it until tonight. And I want to know what you saw.
That's a great question. One thing that there's just all these moments coming up for me. One is the song about Grandpa was a soldier blew me away. Now, I will tell you that I could go back into my archive and find for you the articles I wrote that criticized Yitzhak Rabin. But besides all the politics, we lost a kind of leadership then that has not been replaced. And so that stayed with me all the way. I mentioned this before when we were talking about this. There, in the play, there's a mention of the kidnapping of what was Wachsman? Not John Wachsman, and there was Rabin ordered a commando raid to try to rescue him, and the raid failed. And Wachsman was killed, and at least one of the soldiers was killed. I don't remember the exact number. And the statement to the nation that Rabin began with was, "I am the prime minister. I am responsible." The whole time I'm watching Rabin on the stage, I keep thinking, let's get beyond the political ideology. Could not be a greater difference in character between that kind of leadership and what we have now. That is so incredibly lacking. And the other thing that I thought about looking at Amir, because you guys did an incredible job of refusing to make him a monster and understanding like what drives a person like that, is we all have to think about what carries us away. And, the statements we make about politics, and they just come so naturally and so angrily and everything. He is a warning to every kind of political extremism and every kind of overstatement. And I, precisely because he's human in the play, it would be so easy to make him Voldemort, right? He's just, inexplicably evil. But he's explicable, and that's actually more frightening. And I think that you did a really good job of doing that.
Well, I want to throw that back to Danny and Myra, and then we'll open it up for all of your questions. But who is Yigal Amir for you as a musical theater creation? I mean, Danny and Myra, you wrote somebody who walks away with some of the best songs in the show. He, the choreographer gave him the best moves in the show. This is a very dynamic character. What was both your ambition and intention in creating someone like that to steal our imagination and a part of our heart?
Just start, many people
Talk
ask.
into the microphone.
Sorry. Many people have asked, why did you humanism? Somebody even in one of our readings complained that he was
Talk louder into the microphone.
Somebody even complained that he was too human. He says, "You made him human. I don't like him." But I feel, first of all, just as a writer, I mean, you're doing a disservice to your public if you don't make your villains real. Let's just, first thing is the basic thing. And he's a cautionary tale. Because he's a human being, anyone could fall into that place, becoming a terrorist. And I want people to see him as human. If they're not, if your adversary isn't human, then you can't talk to him and you can't fight him either, because you're not listening. I mean, what kind of lawyer doesn't understand? Try to learn what his opponent is like.
And if he got the best songs, what can I say? The creative process is not a calculated one. You just write.
I just want to say one more thing. Sometimes I often had this vision. What if this play became very well known and everything, and all the kind of settler people started to sing that song about the bullet in the groove. If that became their theme song, it made me frightened. But once you put it out there, anyone can do anything with it.
Well, we really have had some extraordinary responses from audiences already. I want to open it up to you to respond to the play and to address this extraordinary group here. with any specific questions, but let's open it up for the next 10 minutes, please. Anybody have? Yes?
I'm curious, it feels so American, in American musical theater. And I was struck by as an American Jew, that there was very little Hebrew, and there was that I could really hear Israeli music, or a nod to Israeli music, or the place that this is all happening in. And I'm curious if that was a conscious choice. Pass the buck.
First of all, it was done in Hebrew, entirely in Hebrew, in Israel. So,
But you said it was translated into Hebrew from the original language.
yes, English is our native tongue, both of us. We lived the first half of our lives. So now it's so yes, in the adapting it for this audience, we minimize the Hebrew. Whether there's too much, too little, I don't know. I, as a composer, cannot shed my American skin. I will just say that. I know Israeli music. Israelis have seen this production and said, "Where is the Israeli music of the 1990s? I don't hear it." I just, as a theater composer, I just look at the moment, and really what comes. And I guess you outed me, because they really, I think, follow more of the American musical theater traditions, certainly, than the Israeli popular music or folk music tradition. I don't know if anybody caught it, but there are 7 notes from Shir LaShalom in the first song. Do you get it?
And also Eve Tzu.
Oh,
In
really?
translation.
That I don't know.
If you will it, it is no dream.
Oh, in translation, yes. Yeah. Yes, and Ecclesiastes, there's a time for war, there's a time for,
Other reactions to the play itself? Richard?
I was just curious, you made a clear choice not to actually show the assassination itself. I liked that choice myself, but I know some people clearly noticed that, and I'm wondering if you could comment on it.
Since we all know it's a play about the assassination, it seemed unnecessary. Since we all know this is about the assassination, it seemed unnecessary. Also, our director, Alex, who deserves a lot of praise here, she also thought it would be, just tacky. So I think, we never had shots even before this iteration. We always went for it being off stage.
You had a line in it that was about the state of Israel is shocked to announce at the end.
We had
And I asked that be removed because I wanted to sustain that moment, because everyone knows what's going to happen, and that's sort of a frozen moment there at the end to sort of take away. And and we definitely, I felt very strongly that there should be no gunshot. And also, he didn't get killed in that moment.
Right.
Yeah. Right after that moment. So it was about suspending that moment of where he's so happy and surprised and delighted by the size of the crowd and the feeling of support that he has been unsure about the whole show. So, but you did have an acknowledgement about the assassination woven into that. Well, I'll take the blame for that. But
praise.
Or the praise.
Yeah.
Some people really don't like that choice, I've heard. But
What I was going to say is, having written works of history, is the challenge in writing a work of history is people know the ending. Right? When you're doing, you write a piece of fiction, a mystery, say, people have to wait to the last page to find out who done it. When you're writing history, the mystery is how we got there. The ending is known, but what the audience is discovering is how we got there. So that's, to me, that's what the play did, is ask the question of how did we get to that terrible moment? And the terrible moment itself is you knew it.
I'm going to call on Dan Raviv in one moment, but before I do, just to point you to your program where it says the voiceover talent. You'll hear that the radio broadcast, the television broadcast that we hear throughout the show come from a genuine CBS World News Roundup veteran, Dan Raviv, who's not making a theater debut here in 2007 with another play that studied a family of West Bank settlers and the movement to dismantle a settlement and the retaliation of the settler movement. Moti Lerner's Pangs of the Messiah was a hit production and was really driven by those interstitial news reports, Dan, that you contributed, and I feel you coming back to do the same thing now, these a bunch of years later, generous and potent as you have. I want to thank you for that, and I want to give you the stage to...
Thank you, you're very kind, hi. I didn't get to see the play, I'm seeing it Monday, I came just for the talkback. Gershom Gorenberg is here, which is such an opportunity. Oh, I have to be careful here, you don't want to report the future, but you are willing to report the now. There are so many Israelis, especially on the left of the spectrum, who say this date, what happened here, November 4th, 1995, changed everything, and it took away a lot of people's hope, but a lot of things changed in the past 2 years and more, even before the outbreak of the Gaza war, even before the massacres by Hamas. Right? There were demonstrations in the streets. There were people who wanted change in Israel. There has to be an election in Israel within the next 11 and a half months. An election's going to occur. That by definition is a possibility for change. So don't look ahead. But how do things stand now, Gershom? Is there reason to believe that a coalition can be formed that is not Netanyahu, that will take a different vision, say, about the future of the territories?
I'm going to say again. Since I don't report the future, I'm going to explain why. Everything really critical that has happened in Israel in the 48 years since I came there as a kid with a backpack has been completely unexpected to all of the experts. And I will start with the experience of November 1977, going back further, when I was sitting in a greasy spoon hummus joint in the center of Jerusalem with a couple of college friends, and the hourly news comes on, and the guy turns up the radio, and the radio says, this is Thursday night. Saturday night, President Anwar al-Sadat of Egypt is coming to Israel to talk about making peace. Orson Welles' announcement that the Martians had landed was less surprising. And that moment transformed the direction, and people who had completely not believed in the possibility of peace with Egypt changed their mind. And I went through the polling from that. I had to find somebody who could unravel the computer language used 30 years earlier to get to the polling from then, and opinion shifted.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, the Rabin assassination, opposite end of the spectrum, was also not something that was, I mean, there were warnings, but it wasn't a moment that was expected. So 11 and a half months, that's like several centuries. As Rick says in Casablanca, I never planned that far in advance. If I look at the polling today, if I look at the polling since March of 2023, at the latest, 3 months after Netanyahu's return to power, his coalition has been deeply underwater in terms of what people say they will vote for. Will that be the way the elections turn out? I don't know. Will a coalition that's created out of that, who will hold more of the power in a coalition that replaces Netanyahu? I can't say that either. What I know is that the least pragmatic people are now in power. The people least open to potential change. If there is a change in government, by definition that opens up more possibilities. But I'm just along for the ride. I'll report it in real time.
But what do you say about the future of the settlement movement? What do you say about the process of dismantling any territorial compromise? Or what do you say about the rampant settlement expansion?
First of all, most of what happens today in terms of settlement expansion, despite all the announcements on new building, is baby making. The number of people who are actually moving to settlements and the number of people from settlements who move back inside of Israel, I mean, our children's friends include many people who've grown up on settlements and are now living inside of Israel. So that is, it's not like vast numbers of people are moving there, at least in terms of the balance. In terms of dismantling it, on the one hand, it seems completely impossible. And on the other hand, I will tell you that in 1975, Portugal gave up its colonies, and if I remember correctly, something like 500,000 people returned to a country of 6 million people. And I have not studied enough Portuguese politics and history to know exactly what level of strain that put on internal politics, but it's there, and it's a flourishing country, and somehow or another it survived that crisis. So to say that this is impossible seems to me to ignore the possibilities that the past shows us are there.
We have time for one last question, and it has to be a great one.
Not a question. I just want to say this was absolutely wonderful. It's been so difficult to put this all together. All of you, so many aspects of it.
You've just said it must have been so difficult for all of us to put this all together, from the director and the design team, the producing team, the creative team, the actors, the stage management, the backstage, behind those curtains, still working right now before you. It's an unbelievable amount of work and such a labor of commitment, love, belief, hope. Last word to the creative team, the creators. Last.
But you might.
Danny has the last word.
Sometimes when you write these things, you feel very alone. So I'm very, very grateful to you that you've shared this experience with us. Thank you.
Tell your friends, come back, spread the word. We need your help. We're here through December 7th.